Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome in to a somber Sunday edition of the Sox On Tap show. It's Tony on Tap alongside NWI Steve. We're here to talk about more terrible White Sox baseball, as has been the theme all season. Steve, how you doing tonight, my friend?
Anthony, I'm continuing to exist. I guess we can take solace in knowing that with their win yesterday, the White Sox officially cannot tie the 1970 team for most losses in a season with 106. The most they can lose is 105. So we got that going for us.
Hey, silver linings, man. I feel like, it's good to know that we won't be alive, at least this year, for, the witnessing of one of the worst seasons in White Sox history.
We're gonna see one of the worst. It's just not going to be the
worst. Yes, the worst. I couldn't believe how your predictions have come, somewhat close to true, if not just blown by your predictions of futility for this ball club. And we're sitting here right now on the 17th of September, and the White Sox are almost positively going to lose 100 games. Steve, any thoughts on
that? They have, to your point, surpassed even my expectations for dog shit play. I think in my preseason prediction article, I think I had them at 76 or 78 wins. I can't remember what the number was in total, but it was one of those two. For this thing to go off the rails the way it has surpasses even what I thought could go wrong. We were talking about this before we came on. This team has only lost 100 games 4 times in the history of their franchise, which when you think about the lack of success that they've had, to only have 4 seasons with 100 losses is kind of remarkable in a sense. Now, this will be the second in a 5-year stretch going back to 2018 when they lost 100 games. But, if you would have told me coming into the year that there's a real chance that they could have, the second worst season in the history of this franchise, I would have said, I don't think it will be that bad, but here we are.
We are here. We are definitely here, staring that end result in the face as we get towards the end of the season here, Steve. I sort of laughed at your predictions. I think Johnny did too. When we first did the season prediction show, I was wrong. I think a lot of people were wrong. This team's bad. But like you said, if you thought that this team was going to be this bad, I'd like to go back to the 10-game losing streak where I was sitting there thinking, this team will get hot for a stretch. They'll put together some wins. What is our longest win streak this season? Is it 3 games? I think it's 3 games. I can't remember a baseball season, even in the rebuild or even in, the period after the World Series when they started to, rebuild Rick Hahn rebuild 1.0, where you didn't have like one stretch throughout the entire summer where you weren't like excited about how good the ball club was playing. This was completely flat from start, and it will stay flat through the finish. But I can't go through the schedule, Steve, and find a 4-game winning streak. Can you?
That's what I'm pulling up Baseball Reference right now, trying to find something here. I feel like at one point there might have been like a 5-game winning streak. I might be wrong here. Like I said, I'm gonna try to, use the Baseball Reference machine here to see what I can find. But to your points, there has not been positive things that you can really glean from this. I mean, it's just really been.
I think we had one stretch where we were.
They had
10 or something.
I was right. They had a 5-game winning streak from Friday, June 2nd to Thursday, June 8th.
And that was probably the last time we were happy.
I would think so. I mean, that was kind of leading up to, we were at that weekend series against the Marlins. Luis
Mhm.
Robert Jr. hit the walk-off double to win the game on Friday night. I was in attendance for that one, and then they were up 1-0 in the ninth inning on Saturday. We were there when Code Jelly coughed it up, and that would have gotten them to, I want to say, maybe five below 500 at that point. And they were kind of starting to show some signs of life at that point. And then it just the wheels just completely fell off. They blew those two games against the Marlins. They had Kendall Graveman coughed up the 4-run lead on Sunday in the ninth inning, and then they went out to LA to play the Dodgers. Remember, they had the game where they were up 4-0, hit the 4 solo home runs. Jake Michael Berger hit 2 bombs in that game. They're up 4-0. And then Chris Taylor hits the grand slam to tie it. And as soon as that happened, you're like, they're losing this game. And it has just been a steady, not even really a steady decline, a very steep decline since then. And there hasn't been much positive to talk about. And it's just been a very slow death march.
It has. That's a great way to put it, a slow death march. Normally we do a, sort of funeral show for the team. This whole entire season has been full of funeral shows for this team. We got a comment in here from Michael. It's probably going to be even worse in 2024. They have one starter along with no catcher, no second base. I agree with that. I have a feeling that for all of the talk, and Steve, this is where I want to sort of shift the show to, because we can sit here and break down all the games that took place this week. I don't think there's really much sense in doing so. I know that's normally our routine here on Sox on Tap is talking about how this team is playing. I'll give a quick synopsis, and I'll allow you to do the same. This week was more blah. It was more blah White Sox baseball. There were moments where things looked okay, and there was a lot of moments where things looked like an absolute fucking dumpster fire, which that's been the theme of the season. I don't have much else in terms of how this has looked. Maybe we'll get into some Dylan Cease, maybe a little Mike Clevenger as the show goes on, some starting pitching talk. But we didn't, I don't think we had a Luis Robert Jr. home run to even talk about. There wasn't a whole lot of anything. I mean, there was some offense that came from the Kansas City series. You snuck one against the Twins in a 4-game set. Blah baseball. Steve, any thoughts from this week? And we can sort of focus a little bit more on, the future here, because that seems to be the theme of what everybody wants to talk about. And that future is not bright either.
This team has quit. I've been saying this for weeks now, and you can see it. And they clearly have their vacation plans made for was that Monday, October 2nd, whenever the first day of the off season is for them. Those guys have their flights to the Dominican or to some other Caribbean island booked, locked, loaded, and they are probably all there mentally already. And it's just pathetic to watch. This has been the worst season of my White Sox fandom. And that's saying a lot. Everybody knows I'm older than you. I have
Facts
never
only.
hated.
You like to say facts only on this show? Yes, you're much older than me.
I have never hated a White Sox team this much in my life. And to think, I said this exact same thing about the 2022 team. I had never hated a Sox team more than I hated that team. And for this team to go leaps and bounds over what that team was a year ago, and it's just like a snowball of shit continuing to roll downhill with this franchise, just continuing to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's kind of leading you to ask the question, when is it going to end? How does it end? And there's not a lot of hope on the horizon here. As Michael was saying in the comments here, there's a lot of roster construction problems here. And then, I assume we'll probably want to get into some of the commentary from Mr. Clean about how they want to build this team going forward. They want, a team full of Chris Getz guys. which
Definitely want to get into those comments.
I'm just going to preface this right now. Anybody that watched Chris Getz when he played for the Sox or the Royals understands why Chris Getz was out of the league within like 4 years, because he wasn't a good major leaguer. So if that's the guy you're trying to model your team after, you are fucked.
Of course, they're going to try and model after their newly hired GM. I wanted to get into those comments, and we might as well while we're here. Is this what they came up with when Pedro and Chris got sat down for their all important meeting, Steve? Because if that was the result of the meeting, all right, we're gonna, how do you think this is gonna go? We're gonna model this team after the way I played baseball. That is a giant fucking red flag. Giant red flag. And I will say, this, comes out from Jim Margulis over at Sox Machine, his article. I don't know if you had a chance to read it. It was a great article. But wow. I mean, just the thought of them modeling this after the Chris Getz style baseball player, they already have that. They already have that. So what's going to change here? Nothing. It's completely asinine. The other takeaway from this article, and I'm probably just hammering Jim's point home, is how much of a kiss ass is Pedro Grifol at this point? Because I have not seen a major league manager lick boots the way that Pedro Grifol has licked boots since he's got here.
Well, you have to think about this. As lifeless as this team is playing, that is a very poor reflection on him. That is a very poor first impression to be making on a newly hired general manager. That while, yes, he came out and said that Pedro was going to be back in the dugout in 2024, watching this thing over the course of the last couple of months and the last 2 to 3 weeks in particular here in the month of September, as we're winding down, it's very clear that, again, this team has quit. They are not listening to him. It's very clear that they don't respect him. So he's gone into self-preservation mode, plain and simple. And anybody that's been in a corporate environment or anything else knows that when you are in self-preservation mode, the thing that you have to do is you have to kiss your boss's fucking ass. And in a position like being the manager,
some very interesting quotes.
it is. And when you're in a very high profile public role, the way that a major league manager is, you have to do that publicly almost at every turn. And that's what Pedro Grifol is doing at this point. And this fucking clown can't get away from this baseball team fast enough. But it seems pretty clear at this point that we are going to have to endure at least one more year of this nonsense. I'm still, trying to hold out some modicum of hope that Getz will just say, okay, we got to start fresh. This guy's a fucking bozo. He has no idea what he's doing. I don't expect that to happen, but you have to have some kind of hope, right?
I mean, none of us thought that Rick Hahn or Kenny Williams were going to get the boot. So, I mean, there's some precedence here. However, I'm more of the mindset, and I could be dead wrong, that Pedro Grifol and Chris Getz are a two-headed monster at this point in time. Because that's certainly how it feels, that they are in lockstep with each other on the design of this baseball team. When you read these quotes, I could see either one of them saying these words about how they're going to design this team. We need to, hold each other. How many times have we heard the word accountability or accountable in the last three weeks?
Anthony, even though I'm gone, accountability is not a problem within the White Sox organization. Mr. Reinsdorf, the chairman, he held myself and Rick accountable for our failures this year. We have to own up to those. So anyone that says accountability is an issue within the White Sox. Simply does not know what they are talking about, and they really need to stay out of White Sox business.
And that there is the best Kenny Williams impression on the internet. So we've got that going for us. But I think, Steve, if we pull back to reality for a second here, as a fan, that we have ears and eyes on this ball club. The promotion of Chris Getz was almost the admission that there is an accountability problem within the White Sox organization based on the track record that's already there. This was our biggest fear. Our fear has been realized, and we're here now. That's why there is no hope. There's no clean slate. There's no fresh start. In fact, I think I said this the last time I was on the show, or at least to Johnny the other night. It almost makes you miss Rick Hahn at this point, because this is an unknown beast. What are you going to get this offseason from Chris Getz that's going to fix any of these problems? Especially if we're out there targeting Chris Getz players that are already on this ball club. It's comical how bad that this has gotten. I go back, you had mentioned something just a little bit ago, that the 2022 White Sox was your least favorite or most hated White Sox team. And I think you and I were a little at odds throughout that season over where things were. I tried to enjoy that team, just knowing that they had some sliver of hope of making a playoff run. This is completely off the rails. If we have to sit here next year, it can get progressively worse from this. You're talking about right now a team that can potentially be the worst team in baseball over the course of next season. And maybe you don't even get the wacky headlines that come from this team that have kept this somewhat interesting. I mean, you've got guns and fat folds going off and arguments over where bullets came from. You've got the firing of your GM and vice president of baseball operations, or president, whatever the fuck his title was. You had all sorts of wacky stuff go on this season. Next year, I've always asked you this question: where's rock bottom? I still feel like I'm on a train that is falling off a cliff, and we have not hit the bottom of the canyon yet. That's where I feel like, as a fan, that's I feel like we're still in mid descent, and I'm surprised at how deep the fucking canyon is.
Anthony, you ask me this question all the time. Can it get worse?
I ask you this because you're older and you know more things about this stuff as a White Sox fan. You've suffered through it longer than I have.
I have.
But the people know.
I have, and my response to you is the same now as it has always been. We're White Sox fans. It can always get worse, and more than likely will. This is where we're at. There is legitimately no hope. I mean, I feel like next year the team's theme song should be "All Hope Is Gone" by Slipknot, because it's just very fitting.
It's very on brand for you.
Look, it's a good song. It's a great album.
How many times have you listened to that song and thought about the White Sox in the last month and a half?
Oh God, I can't even quantify that. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating when I tell you I had, one day where I listened to the song on repeat at both of my gym sessions. So I can't even tell you how many times I listened to it that day.
I need to start like a tally counter,
I probably could pull up my Spotify and see how many times I played it that day if I really wanted to, but that seems like a lot of work, to be honest. Just know that it was a lot.
It's more home runs than Tim Anderson hit, songs versus Tim Anderson home runs, which by the way, I wanted to revisit this little discussion about, Tim Anderson and where we go from here, because he is a topic of White Sox baseball 2024 and a Chris Getz decision. There's a couple of guys who are going to be Chris Getz decisions heading into next season, and Tim Anderson is one of them. Mike Clevenger is going to be another. Where are you at with some of these guys that are on option years? And how do you think that, not what you would do, but how do you think Getz is going to handle these going into next season?
I personally find it hard to believe that they won't exercise the option on Tim, just because they don't have a viable shortstop that they can go with out of camp unless they decide to bring back Elvis Andrus on another 1 year deal, which, look, he's got 1, maybe 2 years left. Why would you want to be around this dumpster fire, for the love of God?
He seems to like it here for some odd
I
reason. He seems to like it here, which, you know what? A lot of people have shit on him all season. There's been games where he's one of the only guys in the White Sox lineup that actually looks like he gives a shit. I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know why he would want to be part of this. He should be on somebody's bench coming in and just enjoying his time and collecting, $1 million, 2 million, and part of a playoff run or at least something like that. I don't know why he bothers. Like, I feel bad for Elvis Andrus at this point,
Yeah.
which shouldn't even be said, but I'll leave it back to you. I just feel bad for Elvis.
Yeah. So I fully expect Tim to be back next year. The Clevenger thing is very perplexing because, that is a mutual option. So, he has the ability to opt out and go test the market. The interesting dynamic with it, though, is, he was placed on waivers and nobody took a bite on him. And I've heard through the grapevine that he is not someone that is well liked around the game. And that has kind of been a factor in this because he was throwing the ball very well. And, you could have certainly made the case that he's the type of guy that would have helped teams in the playoff mix, down here for the stretch run over the final course of the season. But nobody was willing to deal with that. And so it kind of makes you wonder, would he opt out and go into the market, or would he know and take the security of knowing he's got a guaranteed like $10 million payday here with this team? So that's going to be a very fascinating one to watch. And I really, for the life of me, can't peg what is going to happen with that, in all honesty. Just on the surface level, you would think he would opt out to try to go to another contending team and be able to try to get a multi-year deal. But again, if nobody was willing to bite on that at the waiver deadline, when all they had to do was just pick up the money for the rest of the year, how big of a market is
I
he really
thought
going to
that there
have?
was something contractually with his option that incurred the team that picked him up off of waivers to pay extra on that. I'm not sure exactly how all of that worked out, but there was some weird contractual thing that I saw floated out there on the X machine that was part of the reason. But the not well liked thing is also interesting because I would be of the same mindset that you are here, Steve, that you see Lucas Giolito get tossed on waivers and Cleveland goes and why wouldn't Cleveland take a flyer on Mike Clevenger? That raises some eyebrows to me. I mean, he's familiar with the city. I'm not sure on what terms he left, but I know, they're at least familiar with the guy and they were trying to pick up pitching. I mean, he's had a better season than Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez was available and was passed on there. So interesting. I think he's back in a White Sox uniform next year for some of these same reasons, unless Chris Getz does not want him here. And the team side says, no, you're back out on the market. But as we saw in the comments, you have one starting pitcher next season. No, it's not Michael Kopech. It's not Mike Clevenger because there's a mutual option. It's Dylan Cease, and he has not looked very good this season, Steve. In fact, today was just another run-of-the-mill start from Dylan Cease, a guy that is 1 year removed from figuring out and looking like one of the best pitchers in baseball, if not, top 5 in 2022. I don't know how Ethan Katz has a job next season. I'm just going to say it right here, right now. I don't understand how he's got a job next season. This starting rotation fell apart this year. The bullpen was not good. I know you didn't have the benefit of Liam Hendricks there locked in the ninth inning. Who's improved this year from last year? I can't name anybody.
Kind of really the only ones you can really say are Gregory Santos and Keenan Middleton, but those are guys that were waiver claims and non-roster invitees over the winter. I mean, if that's kind of your calling card, it's not great. I mean, that's not really something that you want to put on your resume.
No.
So I think it's very fair to call into question Ethan Katz's job security. And I think, having a year under his belt, Pedro Grifol, I've always been bothered by coaches or managers with sports teams being saddled with subordinates from a previous administration. That's something that I have never really liked. If they want to have a conversation, and if the conversation goes in a manner where they hear what they want to hear and it aligns with their vision for things and they want to keep them on board, that's fine. But they should have the ability to make that decision. With Chris Getz, now talking about trying to, redo a number of things within the organization here. If that means moving on from Ethan Katz and bringing in a new voice on the Major League pitching coach side of it, I'm all for it. Because Ethan Katz has left a lot to be desired, in my opinion. It's obviously not all on him. I mean, we've got some talent deficiencies here, obviously, but there have been notable regressions this season. The regression from Michael Kopech over the course of the last 2 years has been notable. Dylan Cease this year has been notable.
Lance Lynn had to reinvent himself in order to be marketable at the trade deadline.
Right.
Lucas Giolito, who was his calling card, has looked like absolute ass all season. I know he had, I think, a decent start for Cleveland. What was that, Friday? But in general, all of the guys that have Ethan Katz's name on them right now did not have a good season.
Yeah, I mean, Kendall Graveman, took a step back this year. Ronaldo Lopez took a step back this year. I push back a little bit on saying that Giolito was bad, for the entirety of his time here with the Sox in 2023. I think that's a little harsh, personally.
He did have a solid start to this season.
Yeah, and it's not top of the rotation type stuff that you were looking for there. But I would say a good, solid quality number 3, which, there's value to that. But certainly not what we saw from this guy 2019, 2020. So that's not great. And you look at what's going on in Tampa, look at Jake Diekman and what he's doing down there. Yeah. Now again, that could also speak to some of the greater structural issues within the organization, not allowing guys to be placed in the best position to be successful, to grow and develop. I've talked about this a lot. The Sox have one of the smallest analytical staffs in the entire sport, where you look at a team like Tampa that has one of the largest. That stuff matters. And I know a lot of people like to scoff at that, but it absolutely does. And this team has shown consistently here for much of the last decade plus, they are not able, by and large, to take guys that have not been successful and turn them around. You might have some momentary or some short-lived upticks in production, but it's not that it's sustainable, and it's not that consistent success that you see from organizations like the Rays, like the Dodgers, like my Barbs, or even a team like the Giants. The Giants do a really good job of turning pitchers around which
Your bars, by the way, got a little bit torn up
it happens. It happens.
by one
Listen,
Mr. Jake Berger, who
listen.
hit 30 his 33rd home run.
Listen. They've won 96. They've won 96
Yeah.
games already. They've got pretty much home field throughout the NL playoffs locked up. At this point for them, it's all about just getting to the postseason healthy. These last 2 weeks, it's fait accompli for my Barbs. Okay, let's just call it what it is. But I'm very happy to see Jake Michael Berger continue to hit the ball out of the ballpark. Fuck you, Ken Williams, you piece of shit.
That trade is going to go down as just abysmal, I think, by the end of this. Steve, we got a couple of questions here coming in. U.S. Sports Cards. Where the top 5 guys think we should shut down and wrap in bubble wrap to protect down the stretch? I'll just say no one at this point. No one.
I mean, the only one you can really make a case for is Luis Robert Jr., but you want to see if he can find a way to have a hot stretch these last 12 games and get to 40 home runs. None of the rest of them are worth it.
No. And, I've seen this thrown around from some people saying, like, shut down Kopech for the rest of the season. And I disagree with that. Throw his ass, if he's not going to be back in the rotation, throw his ass out there like Brian Shaw is right now. And let him figure it the fuck out. I know he's had a lot of innings. I know this is going to go against everything that you believe in, but just make him figure it out and end the season on a positive note if you can. It's probably not going to happen, but I don't know. I just don't even think that it's worth shutting anybody down at this point.
I just think that the whole Kopech situation with, yanking him back and forth between the rotation and the bullpen, I just don't think it's a good idea personally. We might have seen the best of Michael Kopech in a White Sox uniform. I mean, there's a very high likelihood that is the situation.
You're leaving out the one thing in a White Sox uniform. You put a qualifier on that. Could he be better in a different uniform?
Of course. He could go to a smart organization that will say, hey, fix this one little thing. And then all of a sudden now he's not walking 6.5 guys per 9.
Yeah, that should be an indictment on the entire organization.
You think?
And we should have solved that, I feel like, with the Rick Hahn KW ousting that took place. But yet here we still are with no hope. You were happy for like a good 13 hours.
I was, man. That was one of the best 13 hours I've had in the course of a couple 2-3 years, man. It was the best of times. And then
I believe they won that like one game in the middle too without a GM, and it was wonderful.
We were feeling good. We were riding high. I remember it like it was yesterday.
We absolutely were. Got another question in here. This is a great one. I love this question. What, if anything, would generate enough buzz this offseason to gain a new season ticket holder for the White Sox? We could have a lot of fun with this question.
There's one very simple answer for that, and I think everybody knows what it is. I'm not going to say it, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows what that one thing is.
Yeah,
That's the only option. That's it. There is no second direction.
You don't think that there's other things the White Sox can do to gain new season ticket holders this offseason?
No.
I think there's plenty of things they can do.
There's not.
There's plenty of things they can do. They won't do them,
Anthony.
But there are things they can do.
Trust me when I tell you, at no point in my all or part of 5 different decades watching this team have I seen the fan morale be as bad collectively as it is right now. So when I tell you that there is only one thing that can energize this fan base, I mean it. There is but one thing.
Yeah, and I'd like to think that if that one thing happened, it would still.
I would buy season tickets the following day. I'm not even kidding.
You didn't even know what you were getting into yet.
I don't care.
I mean, you got no clue, just blindly.
Yes, because and you know what? You can say it could turn out to be really bad, and that's okay. I would take a 1-year commitment on blind hope, knowing that fucking cancer is gone.
Now, with that said, say they went out this offseason and Chris got surprised everybody and made a big splash signing that shored up, I don't know, pick your position of need because they're all over the fucking diamond at this point. I mean, is there like, they've already said they're not signing Shohei Ohtani, so that's not going to happen. But, say they go out and they have a very aggressive offseason. Does that re-energize you at all? Or are you still skeptical?
No, I don't. No,
I'm still in the same boat as you. It would take me a while.
There's nothing that they can do from that because they're still going to be, shopping at Dollar General. That's what they're going to do, and it's just going to be
Chris Getz type players.
Yes, they're going to be shopping at Dollar General. They're just going to be going down a different aisle. That's it.
You're leaving everybody who's tuned into the show all sorts of shreds of hope that next year's going to be better.
I mean, I hate to say it, but with this team, I feel like I have to be a realist and just think with my head and not with my heart.
Yeah, they've
it's
done.
Not fun.
No, it's not. They've done sort of the same thing to me, and I hate that, Steve. I'm going to be honest with you. Sitting on this show, like everything that we've done in terms of White Sox content and coverage over the past couple of seasons, has been a tremendous amount of fun, and I enjoy getting on these airwaves and talking about the team and doing post-game shows, especially when this team is playing meaningful baseball and there's excitement in the air. I felt like it was so short-lived
because it was.
It was. But, to sit here and stare out into the future, if you had a crystal ball and you look at it, and you said this a couple of times, I'm now grasping this same crystal ball and looking at it and going, there's just black emptiness, nothing. And there's only like the 2 fucking white words of Yerman Mercedes Instagram post in there saying it's perpetually over, just like into inception of where I look at this team right now. And it's really sad. And that's why I love this question. What, if anything, generates enough buzz to gain a new season ticket holder for the White Sox? And the reason I love this question is because that is what Jerry Reinsdorf said his reasoning for firing Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn was. It was because he wanted to gain new season ticket holders. And somehow, some way, he managed to fumble this thing and make it worse than it already was. That is impressive. That is impressive levels of bad for a sports team owner in any league to do. And yet he managed to do it because you're right. Fan morale is at an all-time low. I've never seen so much apathy around a team. I mean, I remember
that's a very important word there. And I don't mean to cut you off there, but that's an important word because, a couple of weeks back when Oakland was in town and, the Oakland 68s were in here, protesting against John Fisher and their ownership group. The contrast in the 2 fan bases towards their ownerships is really something. That Oakland fan base that is having their team ripped away from them and taken in a U-Haul to Vegas, they have anger towards that organization and towards that ownership. Right now, Sox fans, we have apathy. And that is worse than anger, to be completely honest with you. This has been the least dialed in I have been in my life watching this team. because there's no compelling reason outside of watching Luis Roberts' 4 plate appearances. That's really bad. And for somebody like myself, that this is going to be the first time in a decade that I haven't gone to at least 40 games in a season. And I'm not saying that to try to make myself sound like I'm some great fan or whatever, but that was literally what I used to build half my year around. And to now be in a spot, I haven't even been to 20 games this year. I've been to more Barvs games since June than I've been to Sox games. That's pretty telling.
It is. And Steve, I'm in the same boat as you are. I think I attended my first game since that June 10th game that we were at earlier on Friday with our pal Johnny and Andrew Kinsler, friend of the show. And I mean, there was like no reason to even really watch the game. I was a season ticket holder for a couple of years, bought into the rebuild. First time that I had the opportunity to be a season ticket holder of this franchise, which is something that I thought Steve, I'll be honest with you. I never thought that I would give up my White Sox season tickets. I never wanted to. I didn't have a reason to renew. And I'm not somebody that sits on this show all the time because I know a lot of people go out on Twitter, oh, don't renew, don't do that. I'm not going to tell anybody how to fan. Not going to sit here and I'm just talking from my personal experience. It just, I didn't show up to the ballpark this year because it wasn't a fun time. It hasn't been a fun time. That's what people want. And I enjoy to be completely honest with everybody who listens to this. I like an empty ballpark. I like no lines. I like being able to go there and watch baseball without having to miss most of the game standing in a line for a beer, waiting for bathroom, waiting for food, waiting for any of that shit. I like an empty ballpark. I have not made it a point to get out to a Sox game in a couple of months over summer. I can still watch this team on TV, get to go, play golf once a week, twice a week now, do all these other things. It's sad. It's sad because there's no hope. There's no reason outside of, like you said, Luis Robert. They had one of those reasons to tune into a game. I thought Jake Berger was a reason to tune into a baseball game. They traded him away for a guy that may or may not wind up even pitching an inning at 35th and Shields. That is hard for somebody to understand, especially when you're sitting there saying, this is not a rebuild. Don't fucking look at us and act like we are crazy or, holding the franchise back because we don't want to come out and support a team that is actively doing things ass backwards from the rest of Major League Baseball. And I love that you brought up the Oakland 68s. I love that you brought up how angered they are because right now I'm sitting there looking at the calendar and I've had this conversation with you. We might be in that same fucking boat in 3 or 4 years from now where they're going to move. And do you think that anybody, it scares the living piss out of me that you've got people out there on Twitter, goodbye, get out of here. Because guess what? If that's what's going to happen, there are plenty of White Sox fans who used to be season ticket holders through this last rebuild that will just say, sayonara, get the fuck out of here. I don't care. Goodbye, good riddance. I'm going to do other things. I think you and I are very invested in this team. There's a lot of other people who are too that would be very sad. But if you go up and you go into generations past us who've dealt with Jerry Reinsdorf, who's dealt with this organization as a fan, they're pissed off. Something needed to change. They had the perfect opportunity to do so just a couple of weeks ago. And I think right now, you talk about rock bottom, and this is why I feel like it can fall even further, is there's so many people who were invested in this. Remember when Tim Anderson said this is the place to be on Friday night before you go out afterwards? It's not even a place to be on Friday night anymore. And that's a huge fucking problem.
I still think about the 2019 season, the team that won 73 and 89. I had so much fun at the ballpark that year. They didn't win. They were short on talent, but they were fun. There were a lot of nights when I would go to the ballpark and even if the result wasn't what I wanted it to be, I enjoyed being there, being in the environment, taking in the sights and the sounds of being at a baseball game and having a level of hope and optimism for what it could be. That doesn't exist right now. It feels like a fucking morgue in that place. When I was in Atlanta 6 weeks ago watching my Barbs, the contrast in the environment there versus at 35th and Shields, it was night and day. That place was a buzz 3-4 hours before the game. You go to the Battery there, everybody's amped up, everybody's ready to go because they all have this mindset of whose fucking ass are we kicking tonight? I
don't even want that, Steve. Like
I do.
I know we want that, but what I'm going to say is there's 25 teams that are out there that play respectable baseball most nights and at least make it fucking interesting. You can win 75 to 80 games and make it interesting enough. The Kenny Williams fucking piecemeal together teams with one or two guys who are going to go out there and you think they've got a chance to hit a home run tonight. That's more interesting than what we fucking have right now. Because you don't have that semblance of hope. You don't have fans who are interested to come out there and support the team. In fact, most of the White Sox fans that we know and talk to hate this team. They hate this team. That's not how it's supposed to be. This was one of the biggest marketing scams I think I've ever seen in my life. A bunch of guys who don't go out there, they don't hustle, they don't care, they quit on the manager. And to that fault, I almost feel bad for Pedro Grifol, but guess what? You signed up for the job, you fucking do it, you get it done, you find a way. It's beyond comprehension how apathetic White Sox fans are right now because of all of the factors that went into this thing.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that other than this just fucking sucks. And
I mean, are you going to go to opening day next year? I had to ask you this.
I will still go to opening day. Yes, I will go to opening day, and then the Barbs come in that second series right after the opener against Detroit. That might be it for me in April. Which, I was in a
the Blackhawks might be doing stuff in April. I know that they're not fully done with their rebuild yet, but I'm waiting for the Sox to fall to the lowest point in Chicago sports fandom because people are still gonna. Man, the Bears, man, that's a different thing. I'm waiting for your Bears.
It's a real tough scene, it's you hate to see it happen, and I was just having a blast on Twitter.com, making the fucking lowest of the low on that website. Get their panties in a fucking bunch because their quarterback fucking sucks. And I had to call him out on it. It just and making these fucking scumbag pieces of shit cry about it. It was great. I loved it.
The Sox are quickly headed to the basement of Chicago sports. Very quickly headed to the basement of Chicago sports. And it's sad to see. Maybe there's something up this organization's sleeve that we don't see, but
I doubt it.
I doubt it as much as you do. Steve, any final thoughts before we get on out of here on Somber Sunday talking about White Sox baseball?
My final thoughts are I'm getting on a plane Tuesday morning. I'm going out west, and I'm actually going to be in Oakland watching the A's and the Mariners on Tuesday night before I continue my tour across the state of California for the week. So I don't know how much I'm going to see next week of the series in Washington, D.C. or in Boston. And I can't say I'm upset about it. And that tells you all you need to know.
It should be appointment television in the middle of a contention window. And yet here we are. And that, again, another indictment of how this whole thing went, but we don't need to tell you that. Steve, my final thoughts are this. I'm angry. Angry as I think I'll ever be. But as you've told me many times, it can always get worse. So I feel like there's going to be a lot more angry words on these airwaves coming out of my mouth about this organization in the next few months, maybe years. Who the hell knows? Hope that's not the case. There's always a chance to right the ship, but man, they've made some moves that don't really have me all too confident that they can do so. Be sure you're following the show at Sox On Tap on Twitter.com or X.com, whatever that is now. You can follow Steve at NWI_Steve, myself at Tony On Tap. We will be back at some point to talk about more horrible White Sox baseball. I'm trying to get a Wednesday show in this week as we wind down the season. I can't wait for off-season content, Steve. I think you and I have got some things rolling in the content
We're noodling
factory.
some things around.
We are. We think we've got some plans to do some stuff this off-season that will keep some people entertained in White Sox land. So we'll hopefully those come to fruition, Steve. We need to set a little meeting and get just start to hammer some of this stuff out and work out the details on it. But
it's a brass tack situation.
Yeah, it could be real fun to go through this little exercise that we proposed the other night. A couple beers need to be had, and we'll figure out the final details. But with that said, that's all for Somber Sunday. Steve, thanks for hopping on and talking White Sox baseball. Thanks to those who joined in the comments. Subscribe to the youtube.com/OnTapSportsNet. Be on the lookout for some Blackhawks content. I know I'm excited about that. Connor Bedard hat trick in the prospect tournament.
He's our only hope, baby.
He looks great. Can't wait to get to the UC and get some experiences out there with an organization that seems to care about their fans and can do things the right way. If you're a Bears fan, check out Bears on Tap. You can commiserate more about Chicago sports over there with our guy Buck Stats, Quentin, Ron Luce, and Juice on Tap. And then Bull season is coming back to another Jerry Reinsdorf run organization. If you want to commiserate there, our guy Buzz and Goose have you covered over there as they get underway. Steve, always a pleasure, my friend. White Sox, for some reason, forever.
White Sox for life.